The crown, once the ultimate symbol of power throughout the world. But today, the very nature of royalty is under threat. In this landmark series, we use specialized archive colorization techniques to bring to life over 100 years of royalty. And discover why over half the world's royal families have lost their thrones, while others have kept their crowns on their heads. In this episode, Britain's King George V must keep his country safe from the dangers of fascism and Nazi Germany.
George V realised that either you were going to give in to them or you were going to take them on.
But his eldest son's affair with married woman Wallis Simpson is throwing the crown into crisis.
There was a huge worry at the time it would ruin the monarchy.
And when the prince befriends Hitler, the British government and royal family have to take drastic action before it's too late.
And so Edward's situation and deep Nazi beliefs become a very real problem for the British royal family.
It's the 1920s. World War I is over. It's time to celebrate.
After the First World War, people were just happy to be alive.
We're through the worst of it. We fought a war to end all wars, and now we can look to the future.
Europe's major capital cities like Paris and London catch fire with creativity. And a new music scene emerges from America, jazz. The young live fast and party hard. The decade soon becomes known as the Roaring Twenties.
Why were they roaring? They were roaring because people wanted to let rip.
But there's another side to this post-war era. The faces and bodies of the men who sacrificed themselves for this peace.
So during the 20s, there was this sort of ghostly element to it. The men who'd survived in the trenches, not all of them came back whole.
The war's survivors are shell-shocked, and many are angry at the royal rulers who led them into a world war. Anti-monarchy feelings are sweeping across the continent. The royal families of Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Russia have already lost their thrones. And in Britain, the monarchy is under threat from the spread of communist ideas. King George V has clung on to his power. But with growing discontent at home after the horrors of World War I, could he be next?
There's no doubt that George V was affected by this revolutionary turmoil at the end of the First World War. He's seen two of his cousins, Nicholas and Wilhelm, topple from their thrones.
He knew that if he was going to retain his throne, he was going to have to do something to connect with his people.
While George looks for a way to keep the British public on his side, he witnesses one of his royal allies in Europe take a huge political gamble to stay on the throne. King Victor Emmanuel is the ruler of Italy. Like King George in Britain, Victor's Italy is also on the winning side in World War I. But victory has brought Italy nothing but pain.
Italy is a total mess after World War I, and like for many participants in World War I, there is a lot of frustration that the war did not give Italy what it wanted.
The people have had to make enormous sacrifices to survive, and the financial cost of the war is now causing a political crisis. Italian democracy is very different from Britain's at this time. The Italian king is not just a figurehead. He has all the power and is the only person who can appoint the prime minister.
Italy in the 1920s has a form of parliamentary democracy, but the ultimate authority in the country is still the king. He decides whether the country goes to war, and crucially, he appoints the prime minister.
The King of Italy, Vittorio Emanuele, is struggling to keep the country together. There is a quick succession of governments and parliamentary votes of no confidence, and in fact, no political faction can gain enough track and enough support to hold the country together for a while. Italy is slowly descending into political chaos.
The people of Italy are desperate for a political alternative. But if communism takes hold in Italy, this will put the king in a dangerous position.
Victor Emmanuel's power in Italy after World War I is fragile because of the revolutionary spread, particularly the spread of communism after the Russian Revolution. There is no place for monarchs in that system.
The Italian king observes a new right-wing figure emerge from the political chaos, a man who does believe in hierarchy and social order. His name is Benito Mussolini, and he thinks he can make Italy great again.
Mussolini wanted to revive the Roman Empire and create a massive, shall we say, Italian space in the Mediterranean for the Italian race to thrive.
Mussolini's vision for Italy follows a new ideology called fascism.
Fascism is an ultranationalist, authoritarian, racist political movement that believed in state control of the economy, the regimentation of society. And what fascism did not accept is that everyone was equal.
When Victor Emmanuel hears about fascism, he's intrigued. Could Mussolini defend Italy from communism and help him stay on the throne? Mussolini's right-wing party rapidly grows in popularity, and at a fascist rally in October 1922, Mussolini gives his followers a command to march on the capital of Italy and the seat of the king's power, Rome. When the fascists arrive in the city, things turn violent. They demand that their leader becomes the new prime minister.
By unleashing this, effectively a coup d'etat against the existing government in Italy, there is a tremendous threat of bloodshed.
Now Victor Emmanuel must make a choice. Will he allow the fascists to continue the march, or will he use his military to crush them?
The then Prime Minister, who's a liberal Prime Minister, says to the king, look, these guys are marching on Rome, but don't worry, the military have assured me we can deal with them, no problem. You just need to give me the order.
But Victor Emmanuel never gives the command. Instead, the king decides to make Mussolini his new Prime Minister. Victor Emmanuel's decision to align himself with fascism is motivated by a royal instinct to survive.
Vittorio Emanuele may have thought that Mussolini was his best chance at bringing some order to Italy.
I think he's beginning to associate in his own mind with fascism being the way forward.
At first, it seems the plan works.
Mussolini creates effective infrastructure, jobs, and gets the economy moving enough to alleviate many of the problems caused by the economic crisis.
The King of Italy keeps his crown. But over time, Mussolini shows his true colors. His leadership transforms into a dictatorship, and Mussolini changes his title from Prime Minister to Il Duce, the leader. While Victor Emmanuel keeps his crown for now, it's clear to every Italian who really wields power. The fate of the King of Italy is a dire warning for Britain's George V. Royal flirtations with fascism can backfire. George needs another way to hold on to power.
They hatch this plan. The king and his family have to find a way of really connecting with the British people, and particularly, interestingly, the British working classes.
Although today, of course, we take it for granted that the royal family will smile and shake hands and visit hospitals and chat to people. That was not the case with the Victorian monarchy, and it was very much King George V that moved it into the modern era.
During the 1920s, George V goes further than just meeting with his people. He appoints Ramsay MacDonald, Britain's first Prime Minister from the Labour Party, the party for the working people.
In many ways, George V creates the idea of the British monarchy as everyone's monarchy, not just the elite's monarchy.
Then, in 1932, perhaps the most significant change George V makes is when he speaks to his subjects personally, through the magic of radio, in what becomes known as the King's Christmas Speech.
I speak now from my home and from my heart to you all. To all, to each, I wish a happy Christmas. God bless you.
Although he had this very ponderous, sort of slow, rather melancholy delivery, people absolutely loved it.
You have the voice of the empire coming through to you, directly to you.
You know, it's a sort of magic thing, isn't it? And it's instantly over the airwaves. This fantastically important person is talking straight into your living room.
But behind the scenes is a dark secret. The king is terminally ill. Diagnosed with chronic bronchitis, he is only expected to live a few more years. George must ensure whoever inherits the throne continues to win the love and respect of the British people. The future of the monarchy depends upon it. King George V's two eldest sons are Prince Edward, the heir to the throne, and Prince Bertie, who, as the second oldest son, is the so-called spare to the throne.
As king, you've got to have an heir to inherit everything and a spare in case that person dies before you do.
The two brothers are total opposites, and Edward seems to get all the fun. Edward is the first in line to the crown and will be the next King of England, and that makes him very desirable.
As a young man, Prince Edward was probably the most eligible bachelor in the world. He was somebody who was very good looking, he was very charming, he was magnetic to women.
Outwardly dapper, fashionable, very modern. He's obsessed with America, he loves jazz. And he very quickly gets a reputation as a sort of handsome man about town.
To prepare Edward for his future role of king, his father sends the prince on foreign tours of the British Empire to represent the crown. And Prince Edward is adored.
If you look at the public perception, of course, he was greeted as hugely popular because he was charming, he had a wonderful smile, he had film star good looks.
Prince Edward had this charisma to him. He was somebody who people could actually warm to.
But behind the good looks and charm, Edward is also haunted by the legacy of World War I. He served in the British Army and saw the war's horrors firsthand. But, unlike other men of his generation, the prince didn't fight on the front line.
I think there might have been a bit of survivor's guilt. There was a feeling that although he was allowed to join up, he hadn't been allowed to do the job.
During the 20s and 30s, the handsome prince gains a reputation as a ladies' man.
became very clear that actually Edward loved the company of the various women that he was meeting on his tours.
Although King George wants his son to connect with the people, this is not what he had in mind.
George would like him to marry possibly a princess, but actually a nice, suitable, aristocratic English rose.
He gets this sort of horrible feeling, oh no, here's this sort of loose cannon in the royal family at a time where I cannot afford a loose cannon if we're to keep the monarchy together.
And Edward seems to have a particular choice in the women he wants. Married women.
Prince Edward having relationships with married women makes a lot of sense because, you know, if an accident happened, if one of them got pregnant, well, so what? That's normal in a marriage for somebody to get pregnant. Nobody needs to know that it's the illegitimate son of the future king.
As King George's illness gets worse, so do his fears for his playboy son and the future of the British throne. He writes to the Prime Minister of England and shares a deeply personal wish that the crown skips Edward and instead goes to his second son, Bertie.
After I'm dead, the boy will ruin himself within 12 months. I pray to God that my eldest son will never marry and that nothing will come between Bertie and the throne.
He was frightened that his son would take up all of his hard work and throw it away.
But King George is powerless to change the line of succession. After he dies, Edward, his oldest son, will become King of Britain. And his son will have to face a new threat to Britain's peace. This time from abroad, Adolf Hitler. Since losing World War I, Germany has abolished its monarchy, which saw George V's royal cousin, Kaiser Wilhelm, the Emperor of Germany, thrown out of the country. And now Adolf Hitler, the leader of the far-right Nazi party, has taken control. Hitler's leadership style is inspired by none other than Italy's Benito Mussolini.
Adolf Hitler very much used Mussolini's fascism in Italy as a template for what he wanted to do in Germany.
Hitler tries to emulate the ways in which Mussolini speaks as a big, declamatory style, Italiani. And so Hitler, 10 years later, would also begin speeches decrying German folk, and so on and so forth. He even copied Mussolini's style in a physical sense.
Mussolini soon becomes one of Hitler's closest allies, and they both build up armed forces and put on great military shows.
One will visit the other, and there'll be a great display of their armed forces. You know, this is how powerful we are. Anyone looking from the outside and seeing these great displays of military strength must have imagined that trouble was ahead.
Like Mussolini, Hitler also has ambitions to create a new empire through territorial expansion. He is determined to make up for Germany's humiliating defeat in World War I. Over in Britain, King George V is deeply worried. He hasn't forgotten the horrors of World War I. And now, another global war is on the horizon that could threaten his crown.
George V undoubtedly was concerned about this type of display of military strength by the fascist powers, because he realized that ultimately, if they were going to get what they wanted, either you were going to give in to them or you were going to take them on. And if you were going to take them on, that was going to lead to war.
Hitler begins building up one of the most powerful armies the world has ever seen. And by 1936, with the collapse of the Democratic Republic in Spain, fascism is starting to spread here too. A fascist leader called General Franco takes control of part of the country. While Britain braces itself for war, disaster strikes at home. King George V, who has led Britain through the last war, dies. His oldest son inherits the throne and becomes King Edward VIII. But while his father rejected fascism, what does Edward think?
Everybody was looking at him thinking, what's he going to do next? Where could this go?
At his father's funeral, Edward faces his first test of character. He becomes the target of a fascist plot that could destabilize the British throne. His German cousin, the Duke of Coburg, has been sent on a secret mission to try and turn Edward into a supporter of Hitler. The Duke is a devout Nazi and even turns up to King George's funeral in a Nazi uniform.
He was a believer and a close friend of Hitler, and he had been trying many times to get close to Edward.
Because if the rumours are true, Edward is more open to siding with Germany than his father was.
He'd gone on many tours to Germany when he was a young man, so he had friends, he had relations, he had families. He could speak German fluently.
It said, I see no reason for there to be any difficulty between our two countries. You know, the bad feeling about the First World War is now over and hopefully we can get on and have peace.
Edward doesn't see the danger in fascism and feels that Hitler is actually doing a good job.
He believed that Hitler was a vigorous reformer, and what he believed was that somebody like Hitler was needed for Britain.
Edward and the Duke of Coburg strike up a friendship, and he invites the new king to visit Hitler in Nazi Germany.
He was interceding, trying to use both his genuine belief in Hitler and his understanding that Edward, if not actually a Nazi, certainly a believer in German friendship and a believer in fascism.
He wasn't just making idle chit-chat, he was actually trying to have, potentially, the first Nazi king there'd ever been or ever could be.
Unlike his father, Edward is easily influenced and susceptible to flattery. Could Edward really be turned into a Nazi king? After Edward becomes King of Britain, another big question swirls around him. Who will he make his queen? Without a wife or an heir to the throne, the line of succession is under threat. Everyone wants to know, who will he make his princess bride? At a royal ceremony proclaiming his accession to the throne, Edward stuns the world when he watches it from a window with a mysterious woman by his side.
A photographer manages to catch a picture, an image of a shadowy woman by his side, and of course this woman is quickly identified.
Her name is Wallis Simpson. But at first she is kept a secret.
This was thought to be so scandalous, the leading newspaper publisher of the day made sure that it was kept out of every single newspaper, although it was commonly known in America and in Europe that the king had his special friend. It wasn't actually known in Britain at all.
So, who is Wallis Simpson? She's born on the other side of the world, near the East Coast American city of Baltimore.
Her father died when she was very young, and her mother tried to bring her up as a very feisty, independent woman.
She was somebody who was ambitious for money, she was ambitious for jewels, and I think you could argue that she was ambitious for love as well.
Although Wallis's first marriage ends in divorce, she moves to London with her second husband, Ernest Simpson. The ambitious couple quickly become a part of the royal social scene.
Half of her wanted security, half of her wanted to reach for the stars, and she recognized that in herself.
But then Wallis meets the then king-in-waiting, and Edward soon falls head over heels for Wallis and finds her lack of deference a big turn-on.
She doesn't